I think we're there. Got it. Good morning, everyone. It's nice to see you here, and I always like the opportunity to come to Vista, and particularly during like March and April. It's spring is springing, and the drive down is just a nice time for meditation. I notice the beautiful clouds and the ocean, and coming down south is always better because I'm on the ocean side of the road and I can look out and see the waves, and it's just a really nice contemplative moment for myself. Elaine was talking about how this practice of gratitude is something you have to be very intentional about. And so I guess once you kind of get into the practice, then you're kind of always thinking about why you're grateful and why these things are so much to be enjoyed and appreciated. So anyway, thank you for the opportunity to be here and to speak to all of you this morning. Okay, VBT Family Service, and this is my topic for today. If I can get it to click. I'm not very technological, and that's why I have Sterling here as my backup. He's very reassuring. Okay, the title of my talk this morning is called Greek Geek Wisdom. And I want to introduce you to, if you have not ever been introduced to, the Stoics of ancient Greece and Rome. How many of you are familiar with the philosophy of Stoicism? I think some of you may be. Okay, so for those, all of you who don't know anything about it, hopefully you'll learn something. And for those of you who do know something, maybe you'll go a little bit deeper into what this philosophy is all about and why I'm talking about it at a Dharma talk this morning. Okay, let's get started. So, I'm not an expert on Stoicism, but I've had some interest, sort of initiated by my husband, who discovered this man. His name is Ryan Holiday, and he is the author of something called The Daily Stoic. And he has this book, The Daily Stoic, and he has written several other books, but he is very much into Stoic philosophy. He has numerous YouTube videos that anyone can access. If you just type in Daily Stoic, there'll be dozens and dozens, I don't think hundreds, but dozens of topics or talks that he does. They're always pretty short. So my husband Tom got kind of interested in Stoicism because so much of it sounds Buddhist to the two of us. So he's now signed up for something called the Daily Stoic message. He gets it on his email every morning. And I'm not signed up because it's just too many things that I have to think about at any given time. But he does send things to me when something kind of hits him. And he thinks this might be an interesting idea for maybe a Dharma talk or a way to tie into Buddhism. So Ryan Holiday, again, is sort of an expert on Stoicism, and he's sort of been the teacher for us into what Stoicism actually is. And I hope to inform you a little bit about that this morning. Okay. So we're going to first talk about Stoic with a capital S versus Stoic with a little s. So Stoic with the little s, maybe most of you think about as someone or a descriptor for someone who is being emotionless, or somebody who's very resigned, somebody who isn't super emotional, maybe somebody who has kind of given up on something. And Stoic with a capital S is hardly that. It is a philosophy, a very dynamic philosophy that is anything but emotionless or resigned. Today we will talk about Stoics and Stoicism as the philosophy that has influenced countless great leaders over 2,500 years. This is a very ancient philosophy. As I mentioned, it comes to us from the Greeks and the Romans. And again, I will try to tie in how we're talking or why we're talking about it in a Buddhist temple today. So some of the people who have been followers of Stoicism include some of these people. I'm sure you recognize George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Teddy Roosevelt. I think one of these is Ralph Waldo Emerson. The other is Walt Whitman. And this is Frederick the Great. And recently I learned that Bill Clinton was also a reader or a follower of Stoic philosophy. But it's been a philosophy that has been here for a very, very long time. And it has influenced a lot of great leaders and everyday people as well. Okay. So the Stoics advocate living a virtuous life to achieve happiness, or what they call eudaimonia. And that's also another, I think, Greek word. It's a word that Reverend Tetsuo Uno used a lot, and he did talk a lot about Greek philosophy and this idea of eudaimonia. It's the idea of achieving a life of flourishing or a flourishment, a very fulfilling life, a very complete life. And so that was one of the goals of the Stoics, is to live a life of eudaimonia. So who recognizes this person and this movie? What movie is this from? Gladiator, yes. One of my favorite movies. And why am I showing you this picture of the gladiator? Well, the movie takes place, of course, he's a fictional person that I understand was based in large part on the real life person of Spartacus, who, if you remember the Kirk Douglas movie from way long time ago, some of you are old enough to remember that movie, is this Roman hero. But the reason why I have this up is because another important character in that movie was this person. I think this is Richard Harris, and who is he supposed to be? Does anyone remember? Okay, well, he was the Roman emperor that was in this movie, and he is depicting the Roman emperor Caesar of Marcus Aurelius, who was one of the great Stoic thinkers, and someone who Ryan Holiday quotes a lot, talks about a lot, and he is a very great Stoic thinker. So Stoics include the Roman senator Seneca, someone named Epictetus, which some of you may have also heard about, and of course this Roman emperor Marcus Aurelius. So this movie, Gladiator, depicts a time when Marcus Aurelius reigned. Whoops. So we're going to talk about what is Stoicism, who were the Stoics, what did they believe, and how does it relate to Buddhism? So hopefully we'll answer some of those questions this morning. Okay, first of all, I would like to say that Stoicism is a practical philosophy. It's attaining eudaimonia by living a virtuous life. So this is about how to live one's life every day. And hopefully it's something that we may be able to incorporate. Stoicism was and is a practical philosophy that deals with all aspects of living day to day. The first of the Stoics was this Greek person named Zeno, who began teaching in Athens in the 3rd century BCE, what we used to call before BC, but now we call it before the Common Era, not long after the Buddha was teaching in India. So Zeno and the Buddha were kind of contemporaries. He was a Greek merchant who got shipwrecked, lost his entire fortune in this shipwreck and ended up on one of the shores of Greece and eventually made his way to Athens. So he was seeking, maybe after having hit rock bottom, he was devastated. He, at that point, decided he needed to maybe find the meaning of his life, or maybe find a philosophy that he could live and help sustain him, not only through this terrible experience of losing everything, but maybe something that will help him to move forward. So the name Stoic comes from the fact, if you can see in this picture, this is called the Stoa Polica. I think it's Greek, but the name Stoicism came from the steps that are in front of this, it's, I guess, a building. I think it was kind of a meeting place for people in ancient Greece where people would come to discuss and think and talk. And so first, Zeno approached various philosophers, kind of talked to different people, but he kind of came up with his own version of and his own philosophy that came to be called Stoicism. Stoicism sought to teach humans how to lead a life of eudaimonia, or happiness, a life of flourishing. For the Stoics, this could only be reached by following a virtuous life lived in accordance with nature. Kind of sounds a little Buddhist to me. So according to Epictetus, the chief task of the philosopher is to determine what is up to us and what is not up to us. So Epictetus himself, who was from, I think he was Roman, maybe he was Greek. Anyway, he started his life out as a slave and had some very harsh and difficult slave owners. He had a life that was very challenging. But he was also a very intelligent man, and through the process of some of his various masters, he was educated, and then also became a very deep Stoic thinker. So let's explore more. We don't control what happens to us, but we control how we respond. And as a Stoic, they had four ways to respond to any situation. You needed to respond with virtue, and they defined it as courage, temperance, justice, and wisdom. So courage, of course, means bravery, endurance, strength, fortitude. Temperance has to do with self-discipline, moderation, having the right amount, abstaining from the things that don't matter. Justice has to do with fairness, honesty, and good conduct. And wisdom, of course, is seeking the truth. So now, how does this relate to Buddhism? The Stoics believed that the universe was one entity called the divine logos. Everything in the universe came from the logos. Planets, stars, humans, and animals were subject to the fate determined for them by the divine rational logos. This belief in divine fate is central to Stoicism's key ideas. Passive objects within the universe followed the chain of fate and lived according to their essential natures. This is what the Stoics meant by living in accordance with nature. In Stoic thinking, fate and free will coexisted. We humans must choose to accept the fate of our essential nature as a rational animal. This is, again, trying to be this, in Buddhist terms, we would call it trying to maintain this idea of oneness. This sounds like the Buddhist idea of oneness, as I said, and living with things as they are. The divine logos, arguably, could be Amida, and Stoicism reflects the ideas of cause and effect and the Buddhist idea of interdependence. As the universe was preordained by the divine logos, the Stoics reasoned that we shouldn't worry about things that we can't control. As Buddhists, we would say that things arise and fall because of causes and conditions, and accept that there is much we cannot control. By striving for inner peace, Stoics believed we could avoid evil, ignorance, and unhappiness, allowing us to lead a virtuous life, a flourishing life of eudaimonia. Don't we as Buddhists also strive for inner peace? We go through mindfulness. Well, we do it through mindfulness, self-reflection, listening to the Dharma, and being part of a Sangha. So we don't control what happens to us, but we control how we respond. So I'm reiterating what I said previously. And here is a Buddhist formulation of how we might respond, which comes to us from Reverend Gyodo Haguri, who was a very important teacher for my family, particularly my grandfather and my mother. He was their mentor in their path to Buddhist awakening. And he says, should be our response. And as human beings, we should be strong in crisis, humble in success, tender in our feelings, and grateful at all times. So this sounds very much like what the Stoics mentioned, where they talked about courage, being strong in crisis, being temperate, humble in success, justice, tender in our feelings, compassionate towards all, and grateful at all times is, in my view, a form of wisdom. So there's a lot of parallels in that regard. Whoops. So I want to give you now another Stoic idea, and it's something called amor fati, love your fate. And according to Stoicism, the obstacle is the way. And this is also at the title of a Ryan Holiday book. The Stoics are not only familiar with this attitude, but they embraced it. 2,000 years ago, writing in his own personal journal, which would later become known as Meditations, Emperor Marcus Aurelius would say, quote, "A blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of everything that is thrown into it." Another Stoic, Epictetus, who was a crippled slave, had faced adversity after adversity, echoed the same idea. Quote, "Do not seek for things to happen the way you want them to. Rather, wish that what happens happen the way it happens. Then you will be happy." End quote. It is why amor fati is the Stoic exercise and mindset that you take on for making the best out of anything that happens, treating each and every moment, no matter how challenging, as something to be embraced, not avoided. Not only be okay with it, but love it and be better for it, so that like oxygen to a fire, obstacles and adversity become fuel for your potential. Everything that happens to us is an opportunity to practice one of the four virtues. And to me, this sounds very Buddhist. This idea of oneness is embracing all the things that come into our lives, not just wanting the things that we consider good and then throwing away the things that are bad. In Buddhism, we try to embrace everything that comes into our lives, to maybe not always like all those things, but to grow and learn and become a more wise and loving human being. So this is a list of Ryan Holiday's books, and I wanted to focus on this one called "The Obstacle is the Way." And we'll talk about it a little bit in our adult study. So let's look at some of the differences and similarities between Stoicism and Buddhism. First, both are deeply psychological. In fact, it's been said Buddhism is the most psychological of all the religions because it so much has to do with our mindset, our, our perception of things, and of the world and existence. We're very introspective, and self-examination is a very key part of both practices. We both are trying to see life as it is. And they both talk about this internet connection of all things. The divine logos, to me, sounds very similar to Amida. And our idea of Amida is that it's reality, existence, it's truth, it's what is all around us. And both of Stoicism and Buddhism spend a lot of time talking about the ego, and that is probably our biggest challenge. It's the thing that gets in the way from our life of eudaimonia. But there are differences, and I would say that the main differences has to do with this idea of morals and ethics in Stoicism, because when you talk about justice, and you're talking about right and wrong, and in Buddhism we tend to look at things non-discriminatively. We in life have to make judgments about all things. We have to make calculations and take actions based on those. But from a religious standpoint, non-discriminative thinking is really important. Again, it's this idea that we embrace all things that come into our lives and try not to be too judgmental about what those things are. Stoicism is very much a philosophy. I mean, they do talk about the divine logos, but it's not something that they worshipped or revered or prayed to. And in Buddhism, we do have a very spiritual connection to all of existence. Amida is not a god. Amida is a representation of truth and of wisdom and compassion. And so we have that deep spiritual connection to this idea of Amida. And Stoicism is a very sort of self-discipline, self-powered type of practice from that standpoint. And in our form of Buddhism, we do emphasize other power, that things are coming to us, that we are being led to awakening, but it's being actually a gift that we are being given by the universe. So from that standpoint, there are some differences. So why study the Stoics? And my answer to that is that we study the Stoics because it's a metaphor for all the things that come into our life that inform us, that help us become wiser, to help us learn the truth. And Stoicism, I find, has a lot of truths for me. Buddhism has a lot of truths for me. But it's not the only place you can find truth. You find truth in literature, in music, in the activities and things that you love and really are committed to. You find truth in your family. So the Buddha said on his deathbed, "Therefore, be a lamp unto yourself, be a refuge to yourself. Take yourself to no external refuge. Hold fast to the truth as a lamp. Hold fast to the truth as a refuge. Look not for a refuge in anyone besides yourself." And that's what he said to his disciples on his deathbed. Don't count on me. I was just here as a guide and as a teacher, but hold fast to the teachings. Find truth for yourself. And so what I'm saying today is Stoics have a lot of truth for me, and I have found some important truths through the Stoic philosophy. And so my next message is kind of directed to Dharma school students who, I don't know if there are any Dharma school students in the audience today, but This idea that, we really emphasize in our Shin practice this idea of Namo Amida Butsu. Elaine talked about it a little bit in the beginning to explain, when we do Gasho, we put our hands together and we say Namo Amida Butsu, and we did it through the service. Namo Amida Butsu is like an empty bucket, particularly for Dharma school students. And what I want to tell them, and to you too, is over your lifetime, you create the meaning of Namo Amida Butsu. It's not magic words. It doesn't, change fate. You can't say Namo Amida Butsu and hope for good grades, or that, you'll get into the college you want, or that life will turn out the way you want to. They're not magic. But Namo Amida Butsu over the course of a lifetime, it starts to capture these truths that we all awaken to. And so as we mature, as we get older, the meaning of Namo Amida Butsu deepens. For little children, we teach them how to do Gasho, how to say Namo Amida Butsu. In the beginning, all they know of it is, something that they're supposed to do when they come to temple on Sundays, and that it's a way to say thank you, and it is. At their young age, they probably know the love of their family, the friendships of the people around them. They appreciate the food that they receive. And those are all important ways to express or understand Namo Amida Butsu. But as we get older, Namo Amida Butsu takes on a much deeper meaning for each of us. At least hopefully that is the case. And that it continues to grow and mature and deepen all the way to the very end. When I discovered the Stoics, there were lots of things the Stoics told me that helped me to also expand my idea of what truth is. But we know what is true. We can recognize it, we see it, and as the Buddha said, we make those determinations. But we're here as a Sangha to learn from each other, to bounce ideas off of each other, and to also help each other stay on the right path and not kind of get sidetracked. So all of those things are really important. So we'll end this with Namo Amida Butsu. Please join me in Gasho. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namanda Butsu. Namanda Butsu. Okay. Thank you.